Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing Gage Stoneman. Gage, how you doing today?
Good. Great.
Dude, it is
No complaints.
great to have you, man. So,
Thank you.
before we actually start talking about why you're here, Gage, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is episode 401 of my first horror movie. But you could take the 400 out because this is the first time I've talked about the movie we're going to be talking about today. But like I said, before we get to that, Gage is a self-taught graphic designer from the Midwest. Which part of the Midwest, if you don't mind me asking?
Iowa. Just like
Iowa?
smack dab in the middle almost. So
I am a Detroit boy, Michigan.
hey,
man, so
all right.
Midwest love.
Hell yeah.
So he makes up fake movies, then creates real VHS box arts for them, which is some of the dopest shit I've ever seen in my life. His fake movie studio, Dark Moon Home Video, is a parody of Full Moon Features and Dark Castle Entertainment. I wonder where you get the influence to use that from. Oh, we'll get there. But he does love all things schlock and feels that his work exemplifies that. So first and foremost, what gave you, the push and the drive to want to start Dark Moon Home Video?
Boredom mostly.
Mhm.
I got out of a really long relationship that this is years ago, 2016, 2017. And I realized after that relationship ended that I wasn't doing any of the hobbies that I used to do.
Yeah.
So I picked up Photoshop again, which is something I used to do throughout high school. And then I just started making, and I was really bad at it at first, like anything, you just do it 1,000 times until suddenly stuff starts to look kind of good.
I wouldn't know. Everything I touch is gold the minute I touch it. So
yeah, I mean, clearly you've been doing what you said you've done 400 of those things. I don't think I've done 400 of anything, so that's great. But yeah, so I just started making stuff, and then the idea for making up fake movies kind of just came about. But the main reason why I'm called Dark Moon Home Video is because I think Stuart Gordon was talking about the movie Dolls by Full Moon, and he said that there was just this poster for Dolls, which if you've seen the poster for Dolls, it's a doll holding two eyeballs, like that. And he said, "Oh, that looks cool. What's that about?" And whoever it was, it might have been Charlie Band or somebody, said, "Oh, I don't know. You want to write it?" So like they had made they were like making posters before the movies got made, and something about that idea really like tickled me, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just make posters without making movies. And then that kind of just developed into making VHS tapes so that I could have something physical to hold on to. And then I've just been doing it like nonstop ever since.
Is this something that you do just for yourself, or do you do orders, like people send stuff in, like if they wanted you to do like a VHS case, you could do it?
Yeah, I could 100%. Well, like the way I look at it is that the minute that I start making money on doing this, I kind of lose interest pretty fast.
Sure.
I generally what will happen is I'm always down to do like a commission, and I have a rate for doing stuff. So if somebody wants a VHS tape, I always say, if you pay me to do the graphic design thing, I will send you the tape that you asked me for, free of charge if you pay me for that portion of it. But for the most part, everything I've made so far has just been for me. And I'm pulling stuff off the internet, so it's like there's certain stuff that's like, I don't pay for the licensing of images. It's just a fun art project. It's more like a portfolio to show people what I can do,
Sure,
given the assets and all the other stuff. And also it's a fun way to flex my creative muscle, because a lot of it is like creative writing, because I have to write a full synopsis for the back. So I'm making up a movie like every other week, and they're all probably bad, but and that's kind of the point, I think. Largely, I think it's the point.
right.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, and the good part about this, guys, is if you want to check out his artwork, you don't have to go very far, because all the social media links are down here in the description. So make sure you are following him. Maybe have a little bit of fun, throw a little bit of commission out there, see if you can get something made that will tickle your fancy for your collection desk. So, now, what I love here is this segue. So we've gone from talking about Dark Moon Home Videos, which is your personal project.
Yeah.
But now, in order to do that, horror had to start for you somewhere, Gage. So I
Yes,
would
dude.
like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And you can't make this shit up if you tried, man. Gage, your first horror movie was
Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge. Uh, when you had messaged me, you had asked what my first one was, and I think I gave you like 3 options because it gets all muddled, but I think this one is probably top contender for first because I distinctly remember my dad would show us horror movies like the Evil Dead series in reverse order, because Army of Darkness is much more kid friendly than Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead.
right.
And then same thing with Puppet Master. I think we probably watched 3, 4, and 5, and then later went back to 1 and 2.
Right.
So
Well, for those of you that don't know, Puppet Master is probably the most well known and probably made the most money for Full Moon Features, I would assume. I would assume that that's their biggest
well,
franchise.
there's 13 of them, so I think I think they probably it must have brought in money, if nothing else, with toy sales. They used to do toys
Yep.
like
And
crazy.
they still do the NECA figures. And if you
Yeah.
did sign up for Full Moon's streaming service at one point, I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but we signed up for Full Moon streaming service. And when we did that, we got a box set of all of the movies on Blu-ray. So we do have the Puppet Master box set.
I remember that they were doing that promo, but it wasn't just you could get the box set, or you could get, I think it was like 10 Blu-ray discs or 12 DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I got all of my favorite Puppet Master movies, and then like Subspecies, Dr. Mordred, and I think The Pit and the Pendulum. I just got like a bunch of random stuff. That was like a great deal when they were running that. I thought that was awesome.
It's so good. Such an amazing deal. And
oh yeah.
Puppet Master is one of those franchises that I think is just so hit or miss with the movies. Now, we know that you watched it at a very young age with your dad for the first time, but do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
I can tell you exactly what scene it is because I did a rewatch for this specifically, because it had been ages since I'd watched any of them. And the scene that I remembered being exactly how it was in my memory is the final scene. It's Toulon getting his revenge on the main Nazi, because
the main fucking Nazi.
The main fucking Nazi. Yeah, okay. Before this started, I asked if I could swear because I knew at some point I was gonna say fucking Nazis. The main fucking Nazi, the worst piece of shit in the whole movie. Great actor. He's great at playing the just awful human being. But that death is so brutal and so like there's lots of things in this movie that I feel like are really incongruent with each other, where you've got Guy Rolfe playing just this very tender, sweet person 1 minute, and then he has this crazed look in his eyes as he's like, cranking him up onto the thing. And I just remember like the violence in the movie being so brutal because he gets hooked. This was the main part that stuck with me. When he is hooked in to the weird pulley system, it's asymmetrical. He's got one in his hand, one in the back of his skull, one in his ankle, and one in his calf. So when he comes, he's like in this weird, like rictus position. And I remember being just like, not horrified, because there's like a sense of satisfaction seeing this bad person get his comeuppance, but then he's got snot and tears coming down his face while this is happening, and you feel the violence in that moment. It's very strange for the rest of the movie, which, by the way, if you haven't watched it recently, it's very slow until that point. It's the pacing is very odd for that movie, or for the whole thing. But
a lot of the Puppet Master movies are like that, actually. But
I remember distinctly, I could not tell you what the plot of the first one is to save my life. I know there's psychics in it. That's the only like main point. The second one I remember going at a much a better clip. There was more stuff happening and it was just kind of crazy. But yeah, they are all kind of meandering a little bit.
Yeah. And Puppet Master 3, though, I've always been a bigger fan of the threes, and everybody that knows me knows this. Child's Play 3, The Exorcist 3, Friday the 13th 3, Nightmare 3, Halloween 3. I've always been a fan of the threes. And obviously, the Puppet Master franchise is ever expanding with 12 films. And if rumor is correct, we will be getting a hard reboot here soon.
Oh, really?
Yes. What out of the franchise so far, which one would you say is your favorite in the franchise?
I would like if you had asked me before I did the rewatch, I would have said, "Oh, three. Three's my favorite. Three's the one that I remember the most. Three's, when the puppets are good because they're killing fucking Nazis, which is great. You love that. I think that's an interesting thing how you could probably take any horror villain and have them kill Nazis and make them the good guy of the movie.
How funny is that?
I think
It
that's
doesn't
an
matter
interesting.
how bad your villain is.
We
The minute
hate
they start
Nazis.
killing Nazis, you're like, I like that guy.
I like that guy. That guy's cool.
That Freddy Krueger, he kind of had the right idea the whole time.
Yeah. But I think thinking about it now, and it's been a while since I've watched 2, but I think 2 might actually be my favorite upon memory. And then I did a little bit of, I wasn't going to watch every single Puppet Master movie for this. I was like, I'll watch the third one and then we'll see. But I watched a couple of videos talking about like fully synopsizing the whole series basically. And I remember 2 pretty distinctly being a little bit zanier and a little bit more, cuckoo banana pants or whatever the fuck.
It's definitely 2 is the one where we get Toulon being risen from the grave with the potion, and
it's like it's got everything. It's got a guy in Invisible Man, bandages, just hamming it up, and then the ending when he's in the weird puppet body, like oh my god, that uncanny valley looking. Oh my god, it's terrible. It's terrifying. But I just remember it being a little bit more fun than this one ended up being upon rewatch. But
sure. Well, and we as horror fans, we like to talk about the kills, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with that ending kill. But is there a different kill in the movie that you would say stuck with you a little bit more, or is it really just that ending kill that really tickled the fancy?
Well, I think the thing when I was rewatching it, I was watching it with my wife, which was a funny experience because she said, "How old were you when you watched this?" And I was like, "I don't know, like 8." And there's like we'd just seen the brothel scene, and like I think the thing that's interesting about this movie is that like if you cut down on the violence and the nudity, it would play a lot like how Puppet Master 4 and 5 play, where it's more kid friendly. It's more, I think it's more so like. I think the other kill, there's obviously the leech woman kills, which are always odd because it doesn't really make sense to me because there's the Nazi that gets killed almost primarily by leech woman after Tunneler digs into his ankle. And I was like, are these leeches that keep you from doing like this motion like at all? Like because he's just sitting there while they're falling on his face. But I think it's when Tunneler, it's right after Elsa is shot and Toulon's in the back of the car and he's completely disassociating. Which by the way, Guy Rolfe is selling the shit out of so many things he's doing in this movie. But I think that particular moment where he's just sitting there, just devastated, and you see Tunneler just absolutely dig through the Nazi in the thing, and there's just so much gore. That's the stuff I remembered about this movie was the gore not really matching with a lot of the rest of the tone of the movie. It just kind of hits you like very viscerally. So I'd say probably that one, but definitely the end. The ending is just so brutal. It's nuts.
And it's one of those things where we go back, we always remember them a lot more graphic as kids than we do as adults. So you go back and rewatch it and you're like, this isn't as bad as I remember it being.
But this was like, that's true for so many things. For this one, I was like, this is just as brutal as I remember.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like with this movie, this is one of those exceptions to the rules. Like you go back and watch it and you're like, because the one I always bring up is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like as a kid, I thought that was the most scary, graphic, bloody movie the way I remembered it in my head.
Yeah.
Then I watched it as an adult and I'm like, this is an art film, man. Like this isn't even
really is.
But then you go back and you rewatch like Puppet Master 3 because obviously I rewatched it for this too. And like you said, a lot of the nudity and stuff, I'm like, damn, this is just as hardcore as I remember seeing it when I watched it on HBO as a kid.
I remember as a kid, like, I'm too young. So it's like boobs don't register. in the
Right.
same way. And then, I get to be about 13 and, I don't have the tape I used to have of, this movie, but I bet if you got to the brothel scenes in this, you would notice a very worn down part of the magnetic tape where it was rewound and played again and again, maybe a few times. But I won't say here or there if that's actually true because I can't prove it. So,
Right.
but yeah.
It's just like Fast Times. There's always one scene in Fast Times that always
Yeah,
gets
I
stuck
don't
on.
remember. I don't
understand it.
remember what that scene was, but I'm sure it was great.
We know how horror started for you with Puppet
Yes.
Master 3 and what this movie means to you. But now, Gage, here for a second, I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you.
Okay.
What's your favorite scary movie, Gage?
Oh, okay. So I have like 3.
Okay.
Then they usually, and I can kind of demonstrate which 3 they might be, but depending on any given day, it's usually between those 3. But I think the one that kind of is just a through line is probably Evil Dead. I grew up
OG?
the yes, in a lot of ways the OG, but like the franchise in general I really enjoy.
Okay.
But I think the OG is, I bought a Ultimate Edition DVD when I was in high school. I spent $50 on it. It's the most amount of money I've ever spent on anything at that point. I'm 16. I had been watching horror like a lot, but when I was a kid and I fell off and I was watching like comedies, but I got really into the idea of like filmmaking. And I remember I saw this in this case at Hot Topic, and I shelled out the money for it. And I remember watching the entire movie all the way through and then just starting it again. I watched the movie twice in a row because at that point I had known about the history of it and about how Sam Raimi made it with no budget and all this lore behind the actual production of it. And like, it just kind of reignited my horror love, and I've been annoying people talking about it ever since. For the entire summer I had that, I might have watched that movie maybe a dozen times because I kept showing it to people. I kept making them sit down and watch it with me. So yeah, I think it's definitely got to be that. And then like other days it's like, yeah, just depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes it's The Thing, or sometimes it's Reanimator for different reasons. But
right. Well, I mean, and all great practical effect movies, man. So I can't say a word about any one of them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've talked about what these movies meant to you and how much they mean to you still. But what I want to do before I let you go, I want to go back to Puppet Master 3. And what we're going to do here, Gage, is we are going to rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not judging Puppet Master 3 on acting, production, score, nothing like that. What we're doing here is strictly ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Gage, what would your ranking of Puppet Master 3 be?
Okay, so not on score, but
right.
Score is really good.
I know. Yeah. Like I said, we're not being critical at all. Just how it affected you and your personal, like as a young boy, how it affected you.
So I guess the way I would describe it is, I think I can't give it like 5 or 4, just because as much as Full Moon as a whole kind of has inspired me now, it's not really the reason I'm a horror fan. Like I said, I think Evil Dead has more of a hold on me there. But I think I have to give it like at least a 3 or a 3.5, because it definitely feels very influential, and right now too, because I just made 3 different covers that are basically parodies of Puppet Master that I've been calling Marionette Massacre, where I just basically took the demonic toys plot and the Puppet Master plot, and I just kind of mashed them together for those. So yeah, I think a 3.5 I think is a well-earned skull count for those.
Very fair rating. So guys, as you know, we are now at the end of the episode. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, Gage has some social media links down here in the description that you should be following to stay up to date on all the things that he's working on. And if you haven't already, please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on social media so you can stay up to date on everything Sledgehammer Horror is working on. Gage, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.
And fuck Nazis.
Motherfuck Nazis, man. I fucking hate Nazis.
Sorry, I didn't mean to break up the.
Dude, no, you know what? Everybody, now that you're seeing this, I'm leaving that in. So
Okay.
have a good night, everybody.